I'm sure many of you have been told at some point in your lives that you should just be yourself. Well, that sounds fantastic for a motivational poster, but what does it really mean? And why does it often feel impossible to do? So let's talk about it. To start, I believe a lot of this struggle stems from our childhood, specifically how we were raised by our caregivers, our environment, and restrictions placed on us that were unavoidable for us by our authority figures and peers. When we are children, we are sponges, absorbing everything and everyone around us. How we learn to perceive the world, other people, what to like and dislike, and so on and so forth. Our caregivers give us the guidebook on life, how to act or behave in social situations, how to respond to others either negatively or positively. They teach us what is good and what is bad. For example, it is good to say thank you when someone does something nice, such as gifting you a present for your birthday. It is bad to throw a temper tantrum when you didn't get that happy meal you so desperately wanted that evening. Many things we are taught are fundamentally good things. It's to teach humility, patience, emotional regulation, discipline, etc. But the problem is, many of us either don't get those lessons or the lessons taught were warped in some way, where so much of it gets internalized and it changes the way we see the world and how we think of ourselves. We are human and are bound to make mistakes. We all have a memory of when we did something bad, whether intentionally or not, and got a good talking to about it. You are probably thinking of that moment now. Maybe you don't even remember the details like what you were wearing, what time of day it was, or even what day or year it was. But I can almost guarantee that you remember how you felt. Now, I'm no doctor, but from my own studies, I've learned emotional processing can be quite complex. Yes, our memory of that event isn't perfect, but we remember the feeling of it because of the emotional attachment we made to that memory. Details like what you were wearing that day are insignificant in our brains, unless the emotional aspect of it is directly connected to that specific detail, which is what our brain clings on to. A lot of what I'm talking about is stuff from our more formative years. But things that we learn in these years follow us well into our teens and adulthood. When we are teenagers, many of us have the struggle of trying to fit in with our peers. This is our first real step into juggling social expectations and learning how to act in certain ways. This is where we are challenged on what is good and what is bad, and so on. How we dress, how we look, how we present ourselves all get judged at the highest level around this age because this is when we are forced into social structures. We all want to belong in a community. It's within our human nature to want people we can connect with. So when we are forced into this very judgmental environment, things get confusing, frustrating, and sometimes destructive to our well-being. This is when we normally develop a persona in order to fit in with our peers. We may choose to act against our own interests or benefits because we have decided that this persona is more worthwhile than everything else because of that deep need for community. We will put up with a lot if it means that we are in the group and not one of those people, the outsiders, the failures. This persona or mask that we create ends up being something you wear just as often as your clothes. You are separating yourself from your persona, believing that your inner self isn't good enough to be accepted by others. I believe This is where a lot of our insecurities grow exponentially because of that separation of the inner self and the outer self. The mask we place on ourselves become both our weapon and curse, defending one side while poisoning the other. If you were someone who had a rough childhood with neglectful, unresponsive caregivers, or perhaps taught to care more about what others think than yourself, this is absolute hell. There is no two ways about it. This separation of our inner and outer self full on damages how we perceive ourselves and affects our self esteem and self worth tremendously because we are choosing to deny our feelings, our thoughts, what we like or dislike, just to get approval from others. And losing our ability to see ourselves in a good light causes us to conclude that we are bad, unwanted, unlovable. We create beliefs of who we are that negatively impact our mental and emotional health, which can then manifest physically in some severe cases. This is why I think we have such a hard time just being ourselves, because we were essentially trained to be anything but ourselves. These beliefs are incredibly hard to break, especially if we are in a difficult environment most days of our lives that reinforce those negative beliefs, such as a workplace. I'm of the crowd that believes good workers quit bad bosses, not bad jobs. A bad boss is someone you can't stand to work for, someone who you probably have little respect for, given how they treat you, your coworkers, or anything else related to the job. A bad job may not be fun or fulfilling per se, but if you have a good boss that is supportive and respects you, you are far more willing to work for that paycheck compared to the job where you actively avoid the bad boss because you don't want to be screamed at, accused of something you didn't do, or just be their punching bag because they had a bad day. A bad boss can be just as toxic as a relationship with a friend, family member, or partner. There are obviously different levels of toxicity given the circumstances of the relationship, but they can still affect you in terms of your own health. So at this point, you might be asking, okay, Ember, I hear you. What can I do about it? How can I feel better? How can I just be myself? Well, I'll be honest and say that this is something I haven't quote unquote mastered myself, but I can share what has helped me. Cut off or distance yourself from toxic people. Not everyone is going to like you. You could literally be a saint or Santa Claus himself, and someone out there is not going to like you. People are kind of like puzzle pieces, and sometimes two pieces just don't fit together. It can be as simple as you two just don't mesh, and that's okay. It's not always a measure of this person bad, although sometimes that can be a factor. It isn't always the case. However, there are situations where we can't easily stop all contact with the toxic people in our lives. With that, the best you can do is keep a lot of distance from them whenever you can. Be mindful of how they are and protect your own well-being. Be willing to say no. Be willing to put yourself first. If this person is a boss, then I would look into other employment opportunities if you can. Set boundaries. I know that sounds far easier said than done, but it is important. And I hate to say it, but there are people who won't respect it. Those are usually the people you need to keep your distance from. If someone says or does something towards you that makes you feel super uncomfortable, that is probably because they crossed a boundary. It's all right to say, hey, don't do that. That makes me uncomfortable. Finally, be kind to yourself. I know there is a lot going on in the world. There are a lot of things that are out of our control, things that affect us every day. And there's a lot of things that we must balance. People that depend on us, bills to pay, jobs to keep. We all need to be able to take those steps back and take care of ourselves as well. There is only one you in the entire world, and that is a beautiful thing. It's what makes us all different, and those differences, when united and we strengthen one another, is where the best part of humanity shines. The best movie you have ever seen was built by the director, writers, producers, actors, and so on. So many people, all parts with different strengths and weaknesses that came together to make the film the best it could be. And that is what I want you to do. Strive to be the best version of yourself. Like what you like, own it. Allow yourself to enjoy it. The only rule? Don't hurt anyone. That's it. Love video games? Play them. Love music? Make some. Obsessed with the deep lore of your favorite show or game? Analyze it. Make those theories. The point is to embrace that part of yourself that you hid away. That part of you that felt that would ostracize you from others. Let me let you in on a little secret. Everyone feels this at some point. You are not alone in that. Let yourself embrace that excited, that little kid in you. Build those Legos or whatever you enjoy to do. You got this, champ. Tell me something you really enjoy in the comments below. Be as detailed or as simple as you would like. And whatever that thing is, I hope you take some time to let that inner child out and treat yourself to it. That's all from me today, everyone. Take care of yourselves.